Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of BKE. Bruce knows everything. So I'm Skylar from Mosaic Venture Lab, and I used to be a chemistry student a long time ago.
All right.
I forgot a lot of it. So today we're going to be talking about some new science. I've heard that people are trying to alter other people's genes. So what is it, Bruce?
So first, I'm not a geneticist or a science person, but I've studied this topic for quite a long time. And it's the topic of modifying someone's DNA. So we call it gene therapy, not your blue gene therapy, but gene therapy is kind of an experiment way. So you know about DNA, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go through that. So I'm, by the way, the background is I really care about my health. I do a lot of research into my health. I do a lot of research into the brain, which we can talk about in the next episode. We can talk, and I spent a lot of time the last 5 or 6 years studying my DNA. I've had my DNA done 3 times by 2 different companies. Oh. I had it done here in Taiwan by a company in Tainan. And I've had, of course, 23andMe version 1 and version 2 of my DNA. So for example, and why is let's talk about DNA first. Why is your DNA important? So of course, DNA is something that you have at birth until you die. It doesn't change. Now, the question is, for example, my DNA test says I have a high chance. So DNA report is only your probability. So for example, I have a higher probability than the average male for prostate cancer. All right. So it's good for me. I know that now. Actually, all the reports said the same thing. So now I go every 6 months to see a doctor, not every 2 years. So I spend a little bit extra money and I go more often because I know if I do have a sign of prostate cancer, if my if my prostate cancer markers are high, I need to immediately get treatment. I don't want to wait till it's stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, I'm dead. So I know that about me. I also know, you'll be happy to know this, and the company in Tainan that did my, which we'll have the link to below, that did my DNA, they also said that I have great skin and my DNA. So I am scientifically proven, and it's in my DNA that I will always be good looking.
So if I go get some DNA altering, I can get better skin like you?
No. It tells you. So there's skin elasticity, there's skin UV absorption, and there's 4 or 5 different DNAs of your skin. And mine are all in the 95 to 97% marker. So I'm very high, very good quality skin. Now my heart does not. I've known that I will have cardiovascular disease. So last week I was down in Tainan at the clinic, and I actually had a new procedure done that will clean out my blood vessels because there's garbage in your blood. There was a technique, it's not really new, but it's where you go in and this chemical will remove the plaque in my blood vessels to make my arteries softer. Because my mother died from heart problems, and my oldest brother has heart problems, and so I know it's in my DNA, and I've seen it. So I encourage everybody to get their DNA done. And the best time to do it is when you're born. The reason why is I can now look at my life and say, if I had known when I was 10, or maybe a little later at 15, that I have a high susceptibility to heart disease, heart attack, I wouldn't eat so much red meat and I wouldn't eat so much things. I have a high probability of uric acid. So again, I need to know not to eat so much mushrooms, but I love mushrooms. My DNA says I have very low chance for type 2 diabetes. So I can eat more sugar, but I don't. I'm very careful about that because sugar is one of the ways that cancer grows is through sugar.
So what you meant was if you do your gene altering the earlier you can do whatever you want.
So first of all, let's understand, I want to know my DNA.
Oh, you want to.
All right, now what we're talking about is, okay, now there are people using a technology called CRISPR, and that basically under gene therapy is the big title, and under there's a technique called CRISPR, which stands for Clustered Regulated Interspace Short Palindromic Repeats. It's a DNA sequence. So basically what, as you know, in your helix, your DNA. So for example, my DNA for, we'll talk about some use cases, but let's say for heart disease. So I have that in there, and there are numbers. There's DNA, they're marker numbers. So if I was younger, or maybe even now, probably younger would have been better. If someone had gone in there and replaced that DNA with my father's DNA, my mother's DNA is the one with the bad heart. My father actually has great heart. If they replaced it with his DNA in there, or clean DNA, then maybe I would not have the heart problems I do now. Now, you can at my age go in and change it because it's a little bit late. But at a very young age. So there's a technique called CR9. Sorry, Cas9, CAS, Cas9. So Cas9 is basically a technique. So you have so let's get a good example. Let's talk about the first big use case of this happening in China. So a doctor in China a couple of years ago, parents had HIV. So in your DNA, there is a gene that is susceptible to HIV. So what the doctor did is he went into these twins while they're still in their mother's stomach, and he changed their DNA to remove the AIDS, the gene that AIDS connects to. He replaced that with an anti-AIDS one.
So basically they can't get AIDS anymore?
They can't get AIDS. Even though they had AIDS, if they came out, they would have been highly susceptible because both parents had AIDS. Is that a good or bad?
Well, it sounds like a good thing here.
Sounds like a good thing.
But I'm thinking maybe people can do bad things with it too.
Yes. So for everything good, we can do bad. Is a car good or bad?
It's good in general. It brings convenience.
But it's bad.
It kills people.
But also the army runs on trucks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is an airplane good or bad? Is fire good or bad?
Good and bad
okay.
Sometimes.
Right. So everything humans make can be good or bad.
So Bruce, what do you think? Is it?
So I think we have to look at life I look at life on a positive side. Should we have laws and regulations trying to control people from being bad? Yes. Will there be bad people? Of course. This is the same discussion we have with AI. Anything I do with a robot can be for good. But robots are only trained by humans. So if I train my robot to be bad, it's bad. So who's the problem here? Is it the technique? No. Is it the robot? Or is it the human?
The human who's using the technique might be bad.
That's right. So, and nothing we can do about that, except maybe when we talk about the brain next time, we can find those people, the psychotic people, and we can change their brain. All right? All right.
They're not going to go get changed.
Well, they may not want to get changed. But this is a human problem. So when we talk about gene therapy, is it good or bad? And I studied gene therapy because one of my nephew and my family, he inherited a disease from his father's side. And he had a daughter who was born with a cancer in her lungs at birth, shortly after birth. And this poor little beautiful girl went through chemotherapy as between 2 years old and 6 or 7 years old. A little baby. So when I interviewed his father when I wrote about this a couple of years ago, I asked him, I said, now, you can't change what you know now. But you know what you know now. Now I'm going to tell you, for your next child, I can change the DNA of your child so that your child will not have that heart problem, that lung cancer problem. Would you do it? He starts to cry and he says, of course I would do it. Okay? So is this technique good? Yes. Can it be used for bad? Well, fire can be used for bad. Anything can be used for bad. But
what are the possibilities that might happen? Like, what can we achieve with this?
So now anything I talk about is just theoretical. There are people who are working on in each of these individual problems. It's a huge community out there. I've been tracking them for years. There's a good book that just came out called it came out a little bit ago, called The Code Breaker. It talks about Jennifer Doudna. She's one of the leaders in CRISPR and Cas9 editing. What can you do? Looking at cancer markers, looking at brain tumors, looking at things that you inherit. So you have to have your DNA. So when you look at your DNA and it says things about you, do you want to change that? Now, as a parent, I have 3 wonderful children who don't call me. Should I change that DNA in them? Yeah. Could I? And if I knew when they're born or when they're very young that there is a problem, and I, as a parent, don't try to change that, am I a good parent?
I guess I'm not sure, like, really.
Well, so
because it might be good if they're just who they are, but if you want to prevent stuff, it's also good.
So can you change people's personalities? Well, personality is not in your DNA. Your medical is in your DNA. Your biological is in your DNA. Now, does your medical and biological make your personality? You can make a case for that. All right. So, for example, if you're born with cerebral palsy, CP, where you lose the control of your body, you're like, does that set your personality? Yes. If you're born without a limb, does that set your personality? Yes. So biologic can set your personality. If you're born with beautiful blue eyes and blonde hair, do you become a TV star? Well,
maybe.
Maybe. Does that set your personality? Or if you're born you have the DNA, good muscles, or you have stomach issues. All these things, yes. So yes, DNA can set your personality, but a lot of that can be modified through, is your self-esteem high? So if I have a very good friend who has born without use of his legs, and he was born in China, was a beggar, was adopted to the U.S., had some surgeries, so he can use crutches, so he can actually get along. He drives his own truck. He plays frisbee golf. He drives. He actually started out as an IT guy, doing tech support for Apple. Now he's was at Walmart as a head of their web service, did a lot of their cloud stuff, and now he's at Microsoft doing a bunch of cloud stuff. He took his negative and made it into a positive. It drove him. It drives his personality. So everything negative can be positive. So I look at positive. Right? How do you look at things?
Positive. Of course. So, but I have another question. So, can you make your children into superhumans with this?
So yeah, technically there are modifications to make people, yes. So for example, there are different kinds of DNA for memory and all, for brain development and all. So technically, yes. So some people, for example, myself, we have attention deficit disorder. Can that be modified? I've never really researched that. It could be. But when it comes to being smarter, that's a whole different issue of how you teach people. So maybe looking at people's current approach and looking at how people can, knowing their DNA, knowing the way they are, being able to customize training for that. So I was always playing sports as a kid, running around, running into walls and, and stuff. So the way they taught me in school, I was never a good student. The way they taught me in school was the way they taught everybody else. The way I learned was, thank God for the internet, because when I think of something, I want to learn it. So for example, gene therapy and DNA, 6-7 years ago, because of my nephew, it became very important to me to study this for me, because I was interested. And so I started studying it, and then a lot of books, reading a lot of papers, and I wanted to study it then. Now, if you had asked me in school about chemistry, I sucked. Okay. So, but that's kind of like you said, should we modify that? Should I have been modified to be much more of a book learner at birth?
Would you, if you have a choice?
So I guess when you ask me that, the answer is no, because I've lived a unique life, but I've also lived a very inquisitive life. So I'm always asking questions. And I think that's the difference. Are you that kind of person or not? If you are, then you can become BKE, is because Bruce is very inquisitive. I really want to learn. And for something important, like right now, I'm studying the brain. I spent the last 3 years reading all the material, and right now I'm reading books on where do dreams stored, where they come from, and how are they activated.
So I'm guessing our next episode will
be on the brain. Yes, it is. So that's kind of who where what kind of person you are. So do you want to modify someone to be a better soldier? Could. You want to modify them? So could the sci-fi movies be right? Yes. But sci-fi movies are already right. They told us that we're going to have great viruses control our world, right? There's how many movies about that?
Like 20.
Okay, so they were right.
Everything could be true with science.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, gene editing could be a really good thing if we use it in the right way. So.
Okay. So should we have laws? Yes.
Yes.
Should we have, should there be government stuff? Yes. The question is, will people follow it? And that's hard to say. And will governments will the government tell you not to do it, but do it themselves? Yes. There's movies about that. There's books about that. There's sci-fi about that, where government does things that you don't do. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Bruce, for today. I learned a lot. I'm sure everyone did too.
No. It's a question that I want people to think about, because it's coming, and people at your age, you're going to have that option. And what happens when you do have that option? So when you have a child and the doctor comes to you and says, you have these options, is that right or wrong? You need to think about it now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Catch you on the next run. All right. Good job.